Hello and good morning to everyone. On this podcast show, we have today our lovely guest, Boris Malgursky, film director from Serbia. We are going to speak today about the very interesting cases that are very similar between the Serbian case, the Balkanian case, and the Israeli case on facing terror and facing an attempt to erase Christian heritage and also Jewish heritage, both in the Balkans and also in Israel. Hello, Boris, and good morning.
Hello and morning to you and all of your listeners.
What do you think that is very important to the Israeli people and also to people around the world to understand about Serbia and Israel?
Well, first of all, let me say that the Serbs and the Jews have historically good ties. We unfortunately were the target of Nazi terror during World War II. We were persecuted by the same groups. We were killed in the same concentration camps. In the independent state of Croatia during World War II, Serbs and Jews alike were those who were killed the most in the concentration camps run by the fascist Ustaše, as they were called, the Croatian Nazis during World War II. So in the Jasenovac camp, hundreds of thousands of Serbs, Jews, Romas, and others, of course, were killed by these fascists. And this is a fate that we have unfortunately shared in this very dark period of history. And it has, I believe, created a certain bond between these two nations that have mutual respect. They have in some segments probably mutual admiration for the many achievements that we've made. We've, throughout history have had, numerous world-renowned scientists, both Serbs and Jews, and we've achieved a lot in terms of world civilization. So this is something that I believe and I like to think we have in common. And I think that there is a similarity to an extent in a mentality as well, in the terms of the music we like and the food we like. And it's not the same, but it's, I think, similar. I've been to Israel. I've met a lot of people there and talked to a lot of people, and I can sort of sense it's like when you sit down in a taxi and you talk to the taxi driver and you sort of sense of the way he's thinking and the way he perceives life and everything. You can always sense the pulse of a society through, I believe, talking as a taxi driver. So because he really talks to a lot of people, and this is where I sort of get a sense of a society when I sit down in a taxi. So I could sense that there is, this sort of, when I said that I was from Serbia, he instantly had this positive reaction. So this is, to me, this says a lot. And
Also, a lot of
we
Jews came from Slavic countries. Also, big rabbis came from Serbia, and maybe it's the same culture, and the only difference is the religion aspect. But I don't think it's very important.
No, I don't think I certainly don't judge people based on their religion. I judge people whether they're good or bad people. So
Of
this is
course.
what really matters. And in that sense, I think that the
But today,
Serbian
radical and political Islam, both in the Balkans and also in Israel, between Israeli and Palestinians, is playing a very big role in society and also in politics.
well, we've felt firsthand what a radicalized society can do in Bosnia. We've had this situation with a lot of people not knowing the roots of the conflict there, where Alija Izetbegovic, he was the first president of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He was the Bosnian Muslim leader at the time. He wrote this book called the Islamic Declaration. And in this book, he wrote that there can be no peace nor coexistence between Islamic and non-Islamic social and political institutions. So
That's the same
this
thing that
basically
Hamas said about us. There is no way to
uh,
live together
on the
with
meetings,
Jews.
like the big rallies that they organized as Begovich's party, back the SDA, as it's called, when they organized it in the early 1990s. They actually had flags of Hamas back then, and they were, very interconnected with this organization, so that doesn't surprise me. What you said, in that sense, they really had this Islamic vision of Bosnia, which is not majority Islamic, mind you. The majority of the population of Bosnia Herzegovina is Christian Orthodox and Christian Catholic, but majority Christian. They wanted to see it as an Islamic state. Because they considered themselves to be the true Bosnians, and the rest were, not welcome in that sense, or they had to agree to be Bosnian and submit to their identity in a sense. So, in the 1990s, we had the situation where multiple peace agreements were supposed to be reached, and Ali Izetbegovic actually signed this one peace treaty in Lisbon, but later decided to withdraw, which opened the gates to a bloody civil war that cost the lives of 100,000 people. And, we've had situations where mercenaries were brought in, mujahideen, from several Islamic countries to fight against the Serbs.
Boris, the same thing also happened in the same time in Israel with the Oslo agreements, with all of those Fatah groups, militias that came over to Israel to fight against us and to annihilate us and to take our country and our territories, and not for living in peace. So what I'm trying to address everyone is people do not understand that Serbia and Israel is one of the most similar countries in the aspect of the problems that they are dealing with radical Islam that is threatening their existence. Also, Europe forced Serbia and also Israel to make agreements with those terror groups and wanted us to lose our territorial heritage. Is that right?
That's absolutely right when it comes to Serbia, especially if you look at, for example, Kosovo. Kosovo is a province of Serbia that has historical significance for our nation. This is where all our monasteries are, our most important monasteries. This is where the Battle of Kosovo was fought in 1389 against the Turks, when a small Serbia with its small army was able to achieve a stalemate with the Turkish, much stronger Turkish army. We managed to kill their sultan as well at the battle. They unfortunately killed our king as well. So it was a very bloody battle, but it was expected that the Turks would win easy. They didn't. We fought back, and nobody in the end won, essentially, but they were forced to withdraw for a while. Eventually, they did occupy the region, and we were essentially, slaves of the Ottoman Empire for centuries. During this time, the Turks practiced very brutal methods of control. They would impale those who would rebel, who would want to pay taxes or participate in the Turkish society in the way they wanted to. So there was a huge persecution, but we prevailed. We've continued to exist throughout these centuries and kept our faith and our national identity. When we were freed of Turkish rule, when we rebelled, we had a revolution, wars, Balkan wars that were fought to push out the Turks from the Balkans. We liberated Kosovo, which is where this famous battle was fought, and which was and still remains the crux of our state.
Similar to our Judea and Samaria, and maybe Jerusalem, like you said in another show, another podcast.
Kosovo is our Jerusalem. Absolutely, it is our holy land, and in that sense, we've throughout the 20th century we've had a succession of bad politics, so to say. During World War II, a lot of the Serbs were expelled from Kosovo by Albanian fascist forces. Afterwards, the communist leadership refused to allow the Serbs to come back, and the ethnic balance was shifting more and more in favor of the Kosovo Albanians, which are majority Muslim. In the 1990s, as Yugoslavia was breaking apart, Serbs were being persecuted, not just in the 1990s, but in the decades since. The way this would happen is, because the Albanians had autonomy in Kosovo, this was given to them by the communist leadership without any democratic referendum.
Same thing that they're trying to do in Israel, to give the Palestinians autonomy over the Jews. and they want the Jews to leave. And the same thing is happens with Serbs, that they want the Serbs to leave their places and homes. And the same things is happening by the encouragement of Western Europe and the Democratic Party of United States.
Well, it's just important, I think, for people to understand how this works. So basically, let's say you're a Serb living in Kosovo. Let's say somebody comes over the night and burns your barn, or kills the animals, or steals the animals that you have in there, the cows, the sheep, or whatever. And then you obviously call the police, right? The police are Albanian. They show up and they say, well, this is what happened. This is really horrible. And they go, nothing happens. There's no arrests that are made. Nothing happens. So this happens another time, and nothing is happening, eventually you're going to say, well, this is not a safe place, and I'm going to leave with my family. And this is what was happening in Kosovo, and this is why actually Slobodan Milosevic came to power, because he went into Kosovo. He's the first Serbian leader who said, this has to stop. This, and then the Kosovo Serbs supported him to an extent, pushing him to become what he later became. But the Albanians, actually, with this whole story that they wanted to separate from Serbia is because of what Milosevic was doing. This is such a lie that I'm shocked at how well this lie has been spread out throughout the world. But Albanians demanded
also
for Kosovo as a republic.
With this invention of the West Bank, the real name is Judea and Samaria. It was always a Jewish territory. Also, Jesus Christ was in Judea and Samaria before the Muslims, and before those so-called Palestinians, that they took their name from the word Palesha, that it's from the Bible. They don't have any relations or connection to this. The same thing happened with Bosnia. It was always a Serbian Orthodox Christian territory, right?
This is where we basically formed our first state. So this is historically, Kosovo is the crux of our statehood. It is absolutely, it is. We have a saying in Serbia, Kosovo was, is, and always will be Serbia. So this is very entrenched deep in our state of mind, and we do consider it to be historically absolutely Serbian land. However, in the 1990s, the Kosovo Albanians, they boycotted Serbian institutions. They decided they're not going to participate because Slobodan Milosevic put an end to what they were doing for decades. And then they decided to turn to terrorism. And this is when, they started using the proceeds from the heroin trade, from even Osama bin Laden was involved to an extent, not just in Kosovo, but in Bosnia, fighting the Serbs as well. They got support from those groups.
Also from Saudi Arabia, that was supporting Al Qaeda at that time.
Absolutely. It's interesting that even the U.S. State Department, as late as 1998, considered the Kosovo Liberation Army, which is what they were called,
freedom fighters, not Islamic terror groups. The same thing is in Israel.
Up until 1998, they were considered a terrorist organization, and then suddenly they became freedom fighters overnight because the West, NATO, wanted to intervene. They needed, I believe, they needed a reason to continue existing, because when the Cold War ended, and there was no more Warsaw Pact, it was a question of whether NATO should continue to exist, and then they needed something to happen for them to deploy their troops and show that they're very needed in this world. And it was bad timing for Serbia, I guess, because we were fighting these terrorists and we were winning against these terrorists, and then NATO came and started bombing Serbia, basically acting as the KLA's air force. And Serbia was forced to give up control over Kosovo, but legally we remained as a sovereign country with control over Kosovo legally in the United Nations. But that's been ignored by most Western countries that have recognized Kosovo as an independent country. It is not an independent country. It is, Oliver Stone recently said in an interview with Tucker Carlson, said that Kosovo is a gangster state, and this couldn't be more true. because this is basically a terror state that is very harmful for Serbs are being the few Serbs that are left in Kosovo are being persecuted daily. And I was there many times. The way it works, there's this enclave called Gračanica, which is in the middle of Kosovo, and this is where Serbs are surrounded by Albanians. And what they do, the young Albanians especially, they come in with like this big old open vehicle, like a Jeep, an open Jeep, and they play Albanian nationalist music, and they drive around Gračanica, just provoking the Serbs, just sort of this mental terror that's completely
the same thing happens to us in Israel, in cities that you have also Arabs and Jews. It happens to us also in Haifa and in Jaffa, in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem 3 years ago. They wanted to conquer the country from inside, not the Palestinians, the Israeli Arabs, together with the Palestinians that have all the rights to go to university, to go to the army, to be free to work in wherever and whatever they want. They even have it's more easy to them to get to university. They don't even have to have a high grade like a Jewish student, and they are still like saying apartheid country. So I'm saying
this is what they were saying about Serbia, that we're persecuting Albanians, that we're doing all these bad things. And Albanians had their own university in Kosovo. They had their own schools, newspapers, everything in the Albanian language. They had their own television station in the Albanian language. So if we were, really aiming to persecute and expel all the Albanians, why would we give them all this? It just makes no sense. I mean, it is completely a parallel reality what was being forced in the Western media, unfortunately, and it is shocking if you look at it from this distance, that it worked so well in the sense that a lot of people really believed it. And even nowadays, when I talk to people, they say, "Oh, Serbia was the troublemaker in the 1990s." When you look at all these countries,
that they are saying about Israel, Boris. That's what I'm trying to address everyone. That a lot of people around the world don't know that most of the troubles that Serbia and also Israel is facing, everything is caused by Western program to destroy us from inside and to give power to those nationalist terror groups and nationalist problematic groups. That's why also Albanians and Bosnians, most of them are supporting Hamas. You also have this famous singer. Her name is Dua Lipa. She's from Kosovo, and she's against Israel. She's supporting Hamas. Maybe not totally, but she's with the Palestinian side and not with Israel. And I wanted to tell her and to say to her, you came from Albania. Albania was a country of a majority Muslim Christians in the past century. And what happened to your family is that the Turks came to your land, kidnapped the women, raped the girls, killed people, turned the churches into mosques. And they had the 7 October almost every day, but in that time there was no media. So what do you think about this support of Bosnians and Albanians, usually in favor of the Hamas or other terror groups that against Israel?
I think it's absolutely despicable that anyone would support Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. And what they did on October 7th, 2023, is something that you cannot justify under any in any possible way. It is simply despicable what they did. And if all the people who support Hamas after all that would just imagine that, what if it was their child that was abducted, and everything they did to those poor hostages and what they're still doing to some of them, if they imagine for just 1 minute, imagine if it was your child. I wonder if they would still support Hamas. This is what I usually say. It's simply horrible. So I as you may know, I'm not an expert in the region. I am somebody who really hopes that the conflict there will end in some way. But I'm aware that throughout history, ever since Israel was officially founded, there have been pressures from outside to sort of remove Israel from existence. And I think that a lot of these countries, if they had simply accepted the fact that this state does exist and it has a right to exist and it has been recognized by the UN, it would have been such a different history. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And this fixation, I think, that Arab countries have against Israel is, I think, in a way, an attempt to remove attention of their population from the growing issues they have at home, and sort of saying, well, yeah, maybe you're living and poorly and things aren't functioning how they should, but it's Israel's fault. Look at what Israel is doing. So they keep fanning these flames of the populations against Israel, I think, because of their politicians' ineptitude to change anything for the better in their countries, where they change everything for the better for themselves. They get very rich. The governments in all these countries are usually very, very rich, yet they use Israel as an excuse for not doing everything they could to basically change the lives of their populations for the better. And it's actually interesting. Like I watched this documentary once about the Palestinian camps in Lebanon, where the Palestinians who left Israel live, and there are 12 camps, I believe,
and the
in
situation
Lebanon.
is much worse than to live in Israel as an Arabs in Israel.
I was actually shocked, because I always believe that the Lebanese and the Palestinians, they're big friends and all that, and they keep them in these camps where they're not allowed to have property, they're not allowed to use the local currency, they're not allowed to have a job. I mean, it's
also to move from
this is
another
the
place
this
to
is
another. They have
this is,
blockades.
you have generations of people who were born in these camps who do not know a world anywhere outside of these camps. And the way I think it works, then you have a population that is poorly, that is living, radicalized. And when they ask themselves why is this happening, they tell them, well, this is because of Israel. And this is how you get radical people who are then ready to join terror groups to fight, by any means. You get suicide bombers, you get all these things, these extremes, when you put people in extreme conditions. And this is what happened, in these what's happening still. I watched a documentary a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, I'm not an expert. Like, this is what I know, but it just struck me as interesting that
You are
they don't
saying the
blame the
right things.
Lebanese
Also, the commentators
state.
in Israel are saying those things. So please continue.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know why they don't stop and say, well, we want rights here where we are. Like, why don't they turn on the Lebanese and say, like, why are you doing this to us? Like, why can't we integrate into society? But no, the Lebanese say, no, we want you to go back to Israel. It's basically putting life on standby, and this is not possible. It's not good
Boris,
for
the
anybody.
same things
And
I will surprise you is also happening in Syria, in the Palestinian camps over there. They are the most poor and miserable people of the Syrian country. The same things happens also in Egypt, also in Jordan. And no one wants to speak about it in Western Europe. But I
yeah,
want to show people over here in some pictures similarities between Serbia and Israel. And also about Herzegovina and Bosnia, that if people don't know, the place over here that is called Republika Srpska is in the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina, that is nearby Serbia, but it's also a Serbian land. So over here, you see a three-state solution. You see Croats, you see Serbians, that lives in Republika Srpska, and you see other places that you have Bosnians mostly. And this country is not an happy country because every group lives in their own territory, their own school system, their own village, and there is no integration. And they literally destroy this country. And that's why, like people in this place, it's called Mostar, they are in the favor of Israel, and also in uh, in uh, in places. Wait a second. Also in places like in Republika Srpska, you could see pictures of his Israeli flag. You see over here, united against terrorism. RIP democracy, Bosnia and Herzegovina, because this integration haven't been worked. The same thing between Israelis and the Palestinians, and also between Serbs and Croats and Bosnians and Albanians. Over here, it's another picture with an Israeli flag in also Republika Srpska. Over here on the bridge of Mostar, of course, there was also a Palestinian flag over there, but most of the people in Mostar like us. That's an important book. It's called Euro Arabia, that eventually also Europe should be, in the eyes of the Muslims and Islam, part of the Islamic territory and Islamic rule, the land of dimitude. It means that eventually the Christians or Jews or other nations need to live under the Islamic rule. What do you think about it, Boris?
Well, I don't support, of course, anybody living under any, uh, religious rule. In that sense, of course, I can't
Of
accept.
course, that's why we're speaking today.
Yes, yes, I believe in freedom of religion, and I don't think. I think the reason why Bosnia erupted into such a bloody war is because one side wanted to dominate another. So there was this, rule back in Yugoslavia where Serbs, Muslims, and Croats all had to make a deal on big issues. And the moment when the Muslims wanted to dominate over the others is when the problems started. So this domination, this need to dominate over others, is what was the root cause, I believe, of this conflict. And if it wasn't like that, I believe we could have, had some sort of power sharing deal. But as I said, Ali Izetbegovic is the one who withdrew his signature from the peace deal, and that's when all hell broke loose.
That's why also what we are seeing over here. We are seeing a roof church in Kosovo that they are taking down the cross.
Yeah, this is from 2004 in the town of
Okay.
Podjevo, when Kosovo Albanians went out on an all-out pogrom against Serbs, destroying churches, burning down monasteries.
Like over here.
From
Okay.
from 1999 until today, 150 plus Christian Orthodox churches, monasteries, and various other holy religious sites were destroyed, desecrated by Kosovo Albanian extremists. So the picture you are
150
seeing is
churches,
just
right?
150 plus. So there's more than 150. It is happening to this day. There are KFOR troops that are guarding certain churches, monasteries, and from time to time, Kosovo Albanians, some of them with connections to ISIS, would throw Molotov cocktails on these churches, just from time to time, to make sure that.
Also, they destroyed the iconic figures of in Kosovo, like we can see over here. The reason that they took down their eyes from the iconic figure is because, like, the soul comes from the eyes. So if there are no eyes, there is no soul. So you cannot pray for those iconic figures. So the same thing.
This was being done during the Turkish times, and the Albanians simply continued this practice. And it is such a tragedy because these monasteries were built in the 14th century. So this is the biggest and most important monuments of Kosovo are Serbian monuments. The biggest monuments Albanians have are statues that they built for NATO leaders who bombed Serbia and bombed Kosovo. By the way, there's killing many Albanians as well, but it was, I guess, a sacrifice that was worth it to them.
And this is also from Hagia Sophia. You see another picture over here, like the same thing happened also in Constantinople, that was the Byzantine Orthodox city for a lot of centuries. And the same method that they did over there in what they called Istanbul, that is Constantinople, did the same thing in the Balkans. But I want to speak also in the time that we had left uh, about that most of the countries in the Balkans had lived under Islamic rule. They had 7 October almost every day. Girls had been kidnapped, women had been raped, people had been killed. The churches turned into mosques. The same thing they want to do also in Israel. And I'm trying to say that I understand the disappointment, and I am also disappointed myself that Germany and like countries that are more wealthy are trying to force us to live under their own agenda, like countries like Germany and other like Protestantic majority countries in Europe. And I think that that's the real disaster, that they are telling us how to live. They are encouraging the Islamic groups, also in the past and also nowadays, to terrorize us. So it seems that Israel has more interest with Balkanian countries like Serbia, or countries that had been lived under Islamic rule. Uh, don't you think that we need to shift this loyalty between Western Germany and to be more loyal for countries that are living in the Balkans? Because I think that you are part of the solution, your countries, and Western Germany is part of the problem. Also, 500 years ago, the first Protestant reformations told that it's better to live under a smart Turk than a stupid Christian, and they meant for um, about an Orthodox or a Christian that is Catholic from Catholic countries in the Balkans. So I'm saying that they had let the Turkish army and the Muslims to terrorize and to kill their own brothers only because they were different from them. They were Catholics and Orthodox, and the same thing they did to the Jews. They said, okay, Islam can take them and to kill them and harm them. What do you think?
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to understand that the reason Western European countries behave the way they do is because of their imperial and colonial past. So they have a history of telling other nations what to do and how to act, and if they don't listen, they intervene. So this is what Western European countries have done for centuries. And when they lost all of their colonies, it didn't simply, the mentality didn't simply go away. They continued with this mentality of let's keep telling the world what to do because we're better than them. This is how they perceive it. They always talk about European values as if European values are something to aspire towards, when in reality what European values are is a colonial past of looking down upon other people as if they're worthless and not worth as much as they are. So in that sense, I don't believe that you can be an equal partner with Western European countries if you're not a part of their clique, because they don't want partners. They want satellites. They want countries that they'll do as they're told. So
Especially
this is
the
why
Protestant countries like Germany and all their neighbors.
Germany's role in the breakup of Yugoslavia was one of the major ones, and it's such a horrific tragedy that we beat them in World War II, and it looks like they haven't accepted that in the 1990s as well. So this animosity that they've shared with against the Serbian people, and in favor, for example, they were the first to recognize Slovenia and Croatia when Croatia during World War II was a puppet state controlled by the Nazis. And, in the 1990s, Croatia was singing songs Danke Deutschland, which means thank you, Germany, for everything they've done in arming the Croats and in